folks, and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/098, and you can email me at the show, pedalshift@pedalshift.net, or call the voicemail hotline at 202-930-1109, and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello everybody, and welcome back to episode 98 of the Pedalshift Project. I am Tim Mooney, back for another edition, and we're getting closer. Episode 100. We got the meetup coming December 1st in Portland, Oregon. I hope to see y'all there at the corner of Southeast Division and 12th at the Beermongers. It'll be about 7 p.m. or so. I'll be there. We'll have some drinks. We'll enjoy each other's company, and we'll talk about bicycle touring and celebrate 100 episodes of the Pedalshift Project. So hope to see you all there. You can check out details at pedalshift.net. We've got the off week best of Pedalshift. One more of those. Next week is American Thanksgiving here in the States, or I guess we just call it Thanksgiving though here. In any event, there's going to be a repodcast of the episode 63 C&O Thanksgiving trail ride. That was a fun episode and a popular one at that, so I thought that would be a good one for next week. It'll come out Thanksgiving morning, Thursday morning, 7 a.m. And then the following week will be episode 99099, the last of the forward trailing, what's the opposite of a trailing digit of a leading digit, the last of the leading zeros, episode 099, and that'll be the Thursday before the meetup in Portland. And then the following Thursday, following the meetup, following the recording over the weekend, will be episode number 100. So really excited for all of that. That's all coming up in the next few weeks. A little bit of follow-up before we kind of jump into the show. I wanted to read an email from listener Brian B. I'm giving him a little bit of anonymity on this. Minor anonymity, even though he said I could use this. You can, it has been reconfirmed, get Over Big Sur, and Brian has proof because he did it himself. There's been a little bit of back and forth all over the Facebook groups out there. Not on the Pedalshift side of things, but on the little larger, more global group that I tend to be in a lot. Folks that were questioning whether or not one can get over the slide in the Big Sur area. Of course, if you've been following the show, you know there's been a whole mess of problems with last year's winter weather. I mean, this is like a year's worth of results from the very, very, very crazy weather that happened over last winter. The bridge went out. That's been rebuilt. And then there was a massive mudslide towards the end of the winter that just blocked all of Highway 1. Vehicles couldn't get through. Bikes couldn't get through. Nothing. Of course, Daniel, who I rode with back in October, he did get through, but I didn't get quite the details out of him exactly how it all worked. He just said that it wasn't as hard as everybody said. Brian writes in and gives us the straight poop, the straight dope, as it were. Brian writes, I just got back from my trip on the Pacific Coast on the Brompton, good for you, sir, with my father and made it through the slide. I figured I would give you an update since I heard you talk about it in your last podcast. They have both ends of the road blocked, about an 8-ish mile stretch, with security at each end and a no bike sign. The south side being right past Salmon Creek trailhead, which he reports is good stealth camping beside the garage, and it's right after the town of Gorda. The key, he writes, to getting through is waiting until security leaves at 6:30-ish and another hour or so just to be safe. The construction crew usually comes into the cafe as most of them are staying there. So you just kind of sneak around in the shadows past the gate, which is easy to get around. He further writes, we then rode by moonlight until the slide, which is just a couple of switchbacks in dirt to the old road, and then continued by moonlight, only as not to be detected. It was kind of funny because while waiting at the cafe, we ran into another cyclist we met a few days earlier doing the exact same thing, as well as a Dutch fellow. It was really cool with 4 loaded tourists riding the coast just by moonlight. Thanks, Brian. That's really, really awesome. I've also got a link in the show notes to Brian's YouTube channel, which he offered up for folks to take a look at. And there's some really good stuff in there, so I want you to check it out. But here we are reconfirmed Whether or not that slide is completely pushed aside or worked around over the winter, it does look like there is a way, by several reports, to get it up and over. Now, I'm going to throw this out there. Obviously, Caltrans is not into you doing this, and it's probably, at best, quasi-legal, if not straight up illegal, trespassing to do it. So I'm not telling you to do it, but I'm telling you that it's been done. This has been something I've been following for the better part of 2017. And I know it kind of stood in the way for a lot of people being able to do what they really wanted to do, which was ride the entire Pacific coast, without doing any really serious detours or missing out on stuff. There are, businesses that are out there that are doing, what do you call them? Little, truck rides around things. Shuttles. That's what the kids call them. Shuttles. I do speak English as my mother tongue, but from time to time I forget words, as you're probably aware after 98 episodes. Shuttles go around there. But if you did want to ride around it, it has been done. And, you now have information, which I do not necessarily endorse, but, I think it's kind of interesting. The one thing I will say is, just the nature of the slide has created a real dearth of traffic on both sides of the slide, particularly on the southbound side. So if one were to go up and over it, there would be a very, very light traffic day, following that. So interesting stuff. I also believe there is a campground on the other side of or two of them, in fact, I believe on the other side of the slide that are good ones that I've stayed at as well. So, whether you do this legally or you, do it in a way that I do not endorse, but illegally, there are options out there. So thank you, Brian. And, thanks for the reporting. And, it's awesome to hear another person tackle that route via Brompton, because I did that myself, as you know. One other thing in follow-up, it's kind of follow-up / quasi connections, because I usually put this in the connections section. And that is, first of all, I just wanted to say I am really far behind with all the connections. I'm the type of person that's kind of one of those inbox zero types, those horrible people that actually tries to get it so that there's no emails in their email, because I, put them in to-do lists or get rid of them. Well, that is every email account I have except for Pedalshift. I have a whole load of people that I need to get back to, and I wanted to schedule some interviews over the winter, and many of you are listening and going, yes, I know, because I'm one of those people. But I'm going to be also playing a bunch of voicemails that I've been getting and things like that. So again, we're going to do another all connections episode in the not too distant future, maybe episode 101 or something like that. We'll see. Catch up. It's happening. But the 5-star review I wanted to read, it is by Rocket Scientist's Neighbor, November 6th. 5 stars, more than a podcast. Be careful listening to the Pedal Shift. You may think you're just listening to engaging anecdotes from the road or learning useful tidbits about bike touring, but you're actually becoming part of a community. And before long, you may find yourself going on adventures, meeting new people, and having a great time. It happened to me, so be warned. That was an excellent 5-star review, because it is really just, I don't know, that's sort of what I've always wanted Pedalshift to be, which was building that community and getting that kind of feedback. So thank you, Rocket Scientist's Neighbor. I would love to know which rocket scientist you were the neighbor of. If that's relevant. I don't know if it is. At any event, thank you very much for that. And of course, for all you folks out there, tell your friends, do the reviews, do whatever it is. If you'd like to get more people to listen to the show, it's kind of a lot on you to let people know about it. I'm around. I'm here. I'm doing the show. Tell people about it. It's kind of fun to do. All right. On this episode of the show, we're kind of in an in-between week, and on in-between weeks, we tend to do topic-based shows. I think this one fits sort of in the lab. I don't do a lot of lab ones recently, and the lab, of course, is the section of the show where we talk about experimental things or ideas on how to make your tours work in unusual ways. And on this episode of the show, I wanted to talk about microfinancing a tour. And the song, because I am musical, as many of you know, or I have a musical vibe to me, is one of my favorite Johnny Cash songs, One Piece at a Time. And the idea of the song is that he's building a car literally one piece at a time, that he kind of, I guess he kind of steals each of these pieces out of the shop each and every time, and then builds that vehicle one piece at a time. So the idea here is not to go out and steal your bike tour. I do not endorse that at all. But the idea here is, what can you do to build the financial ways for you to be able to go out on a tour and to afford it through what I call microfinancing. And that is basically just figuring out ways to slowly build up your reserves over time. Now, for me, I find I do some of these things. I've definitely seen other people do some of these other things as well. I recently have been reading about folks who really are bemoaning the fact that they don't have the ability to go out and do a bicycle tour. In fact, one person on a comment board that I read recently asked if everybody who's out there bike touring lives off of a trust fund, which I thought was a little weird and a little aggro, to be honest. But at the same time, I was like, no, you really don't need to live off a trust fund to be able to go out and bike tour. I mean, yeah, most people work, and most people make that work in some way, shape, or form. It may not mean that you can go out and do a bike tour that's, I don't know, months or even years long, but you can certainly piece together a few at a time, depending on whatever your lifestyle is. A lot of people have more than just financial issues when it comes to this. They've got relationship issues and they have responsibilities. So, what you can fit in is what you can fit in. And I always say, this is a show about learning how to ride your ride. All of this stuff is a piece of that too. So in any event, I thought that this would be a good opportunity to talk about microfinancing and doing a ride one piece at a time. So number one idea for microfinancing a tour, it's an old school coin jar or an automatic savings plan from banks like Capital One, or there's all sorts of different ones out there. I mean, it's kind of trite to say you should save up for things. I mean, a lot of people, we live in kind of a credit card mentality society, and a lot of people will just sort of finance their tours and pay them off later. That's certainly a way you could do it. But, I think that for a lot of folks who are getting into more simpler living, don't want to take on debt for any of these types of things. If that fits your lifestyle, if that's something you can do and you can pay it off later and you don't mind paying the interest on stuff, go ahead, do that. Absolutely. But for other folks who are trying to live a little bit more simply, save up. Find ways to reduce your reliance on stuff and take that money and start saving it. One of the things that I really like about those automatic savings plans is I'm kind of terrible about those old school coin jars. I have one, but all I do is put coins in it, and then it fills to the brim, and then all I do is rate it for my quarters for when I go off and I need it for showers and for laundry and stuff like that while I'm on tour. So I don't ever really cash those in. It's not like I've got a huge coin jar, but it's there. What I do use and what does work for me are those automatic savings plans, because what they do is it just pulls a set amount every week, every month, whatever, however you want it to do. And you'll be surprised when it is automated and it's done without your kind of thought process. You'll be surprised how quickly you'll be able to amass that cash. In the States, that's sort of, if you work for an employer and, you get money deducted out of your paycheck for taxes, it's an easier way to pay your taxes than kind of saving all up and saying, I got to make sure that I save this much money for the end of the year when I pay my taxes, or for the end of the tax year. And that's sort of by design. I mean, there's all sorts of psychology behind it. So I would say the old school coin jar or an automatic savings plan is certainly a way to do it, because over time, you will see that money accrue, and then all of a sudden you've got this little account or this jar that you can go to and say, hey, I've been working for this and I'm going to spend this on my bike tour or whatever, or your new bike or your new derailleur or whatever. That's a really simple way to do it. And I file under duh, as so many things are on this show, but that's certainly a way to do it. Number 2, sell some stuff. Too often, this is kind of a corollary of the first point. We have stuff that's just lingering around, even amongst our bicycle stuff. We've got things that we used to use but no longer do. Some camping gear, maybe you've upgraded and you've got some older stuff. Well, you know what? You might be able to sell it. Now, you might not be able to sell it for how much you bought it for, but maybe half or even a quarter. Well, then you can turn that around and put that into your jar or put that into your savings account or whatever, however you're accruing this money. Sell stuff you don't need. It's better overall. One of the things that I love about bicycle touring is that it has taught me so many things about living my life. And so often I find that as I'm riding, I'm carrying things I simply don't need. And as I walk around in my life, I'm realizing I have a lot of things in my closets and in drawers that I simply don't need. It's there, whether it's just in case, or I used to think I needed it, but no longer do. There's a lot of things in there that just frankly don't fit my lifestyle or my need anymore. So find ways to monetize that. Find ways to turn it around and sell it, or give it away and take the tax deduction if that's available to you. I mean, there's all sorts of different things, but get rid of stuff. You might find that you're able to finance an entire tour based on it. I'll use another example. I used to collect comic books back in the day. And I have a few that are worth something now, more than a few bucks. And, while I still enjoy the whole idea of it, I stopped collecting them years and years ago. And they sort of sit around. They sit around and they're protected and they're in their box. And all you comic book people know what I'm talking about. And, the long boxes and the boards and the bags and all that. I know, #nerd. But I've been sort of slowly thinking at some point in the not too distant future, I may think about selling that collection, or at least pieces of that collection. There are some that I sort of am a little drawn to because I have good memories about, how I acquired that book or whatever. But a lot of them, they just have a certain monetary value. And you know what? I don't need to exist having them just for having them's sake. I used to, but not anymore. So maybe I'm going to sell some of my comic books and turn that into a tour at some point, or a plane ticket to someplace cool where I can ride. All sorts of different ideas around that. Sell some stuff. You've got stuff that you probably don't need, and you can probably turn that into money. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, funnel all gift-giving holidays into a tour. If you are lucky enough to have friends and family that give you gifts, you may be in a situation where you can say, hey, 2018, I've got a birthday and I happen to celebrate Christmas and I happen to be a dad. I would like for all of you who are thinking about giving me gifts during that time to give me a gift at my birthday, during Father's Day, and at Christmas, that is all relevant to the tour that I'm taking in, that year, or the next year, or something like that. You can see where my calendaring isn't working very well. So maybe, let's say it's a Christmas of this year, plus, let's say you're born in January or February, and then you got Father's Day in June, and then you're planning on taking a nice month-long tour or 2-week tour in July of 2018. Well, funnel all of those gift-giving holidays into the tour, whether it's asking for gear that you need, or asking for just money to go towards that. Give people the gift ideas that you need and want that will help you get on your tour. I mean, again, not high functioning math here, not crazy ideas, but just an idea for you. Instead of getting that ugly sweater at this holiday season, if you're celebrating Christmas, you know what? Maybe you don't want that reindeer scarf or something like that. Maybe instead of somebody spending $15 on that or $10 on that, maybe you can say, hey, how about a gift card to REI or something like that? All sorts of different ways that you can make those asks happen. And you can do it with Amazon wish lists if it's specific gear that you want. Lots of different ideas for you there. So funnel gift-giving holidays into a tour. Let's see. Number 4, location-independent side hustles. This is kind of in a different way. This isn't trying to save some money or accrue money based on stuff that you've got, but what can you do to earn money that isn't necessarily in the location that you're at? So this would be essentially working while you're on tour. So let's say that you've got some flexibility in taking some time off, but you can't afford not working. Well, consider all the different types of things that are out there. There are websites like Fiverr and all sorts of different ones where you can act as an independent consultant, and you can do things like data entry. You can do web design. You can do all sorts of different things. You can do voiceover work, believe it or not. All sorts of different things that you can do that may be related to what you do as your day job anyways. So if you're independent, work for yourself, maybe you've got these things all set up. If you are employed, but can take a leave maybe, but still need to be able to have that money come in, well, maybe you can come up with ways through some of these location independent side hustles. I'm using the term side hustle very specifically. I think I may have mentioned Chris Gullibo's name on the show before. He is an interesting cat. He's out of Portland. Surprise, surprise. Another guy I follow from Portland. And he is the head of the World Domination Summit. I've followed him there. He just wrote a book called Side Hustle School. And he's got a podcast actually as well. All sorts of different ideas that you can do to find ways to make a little bit of money on the side, even if you're full-time employed someplace else. So that's a recommendation right there for another podcast. Go listen to that or check out his book. And maybe come up with some ideas. You might be able to completely finance your tours that way. Next one, rent out your place while you're gone using Airbnb or any similar type of setup. Now, I've talked about this on the show. I happen to own a cabin in West Virginia that is, I spend a fair amount of time there, but when I'm gone, when I'm not there, I rent it out on Airbnb, and it's turned out to grow over the course of the last 5 or so years that I've been doing it, to be a pretty important piece of my income. It allows me to do all of the different things that I do. It helps support some of my lifestyle, and it helps support my bike tours. And I think I talked about that on a very early tour about the cost benefit analysis of staying home. And I was able to show that the difference between me being on tour or hanging out in my cabin the whole summer, ended up being a major, major boon for actually being out on tour. Not only did it pay for my entire tour, there was a little bit of a profit on the side of it. Now, of course, I got carrying costs and all sorts of other things for actually having the cabin. And I've got a mortgage, just like lots of people do who own homes. But, it's all there for the taking if you're interested in doing something like that. I happen to kind of like customer service and, having my place be used. I like the fact that it's never vacant, really, especially on weekends. I like the fact that I don't have to worry about someone breaking into the place because, frankly, people are there all the time. And I've never had a problem with the folks that have rented it out. Your mileage may vary. I know people have had varying degrees of experiences with home sharing and things like that. I know in lots of cities it can be a pain in the butt because if you're in a building and someone's Airbnb-ing it out and they're not really, shall we say, filtering through the folks very well, that might not be so good for you. But my experience has been pretty good. So I would say consider it, especially if you own your place or you've got control enough of a place and you're feeling confident enough in doing something like that. Because you might, especially if you live in a cool place or live in an area where there's lots of people who are visiting for business or whatever, you might be able to finance your tour for the couple of weeks that you're gone, or maybe you're going to be gone longer. You might be able to finance it completely through something like that, or at the very least, defray the costs of carrying the mortgage or the rent or whatever for that place. So consider that, renting your place while you're gone on Airbnb. Last but not least, I wanted to share a mini story, and I got a link in the show notes to this is a German guy, Simon Rudolph.de, Deutschland, and he shares this really great story about his bicycle tour. And, I'll let you go and read it, but the long story short of it is that he and, the person that he was riding with, they collected bottles and cans along the road as they went along. Now, of course, and then they returned them for the deposits. And I think that's, you're thinking, that's a lot of work. That's 5 or 10 cents at a time. I don't know. And then I got to put it on my bike. Well, it wasn't like they were trying to do this to finance their entire trip. But what it did do is, collecting a big sack of, bottles and cans as they went along, it ended up paying for dinner each and every single night that they did it. So it's not like it's a ton of money, but over the course of a few weeks, let's say you're going to collect 20 bottles and cans every day at 5 cents a piece. Okay, that's $1. It's not a lot, but it's $1 that you didn't have before, and it does the added bonus of taking those bottles and cans off of the road. Maybe you're going to do better than just 20. Maybe between you and your buddy, you're going to get 100. Well, all of a sudden, that might actually pay for a chunk of the dinner. And that's basically what ended up happening with Simon. So I thought that was a really cool story because it was, again, you don't have to replace every single dollar that's going to cost you. If you can at least defray some of the costs, well, it makes a difference. It's one piece at a time. And that's kind of the whole idea of microfinancing. You can either get with a few pieces, or maybe you can fill in all of the pieces through just some of these ideas. So hopefully you'll be able to get some ideas out of this. I'd be very curious if any of you out there have some other ideas about microfinancing, because I'd love to share them with the community as well. Or I might have to do it myself too, because this is how I do it. I'd like to close out the show, as we do every week, with a big thank you to all the supporters of the show through Pedalshift Society. If you like what you hear, you can help maintain Pedalshift as an independent, listener-supported voice while expanding the offerings. We're talking $5, $2, even $1 a month can help with the cost of hosting the podcast and hosting the website as well. You can do it for a bit. You can cancel anytime. There's annual and one-shot support as well. Go check it out, pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Ethan Georgie, Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Josiah Matthews, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Seth Krieger, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, John Sikorsky, Richard Killian, Chris Barron, Brian Wren, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hepwell, Paul Mulvey, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Nathan Poulton, Harry Hugel, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Ruth Divorcey, Michelle Miller, Matthew Lewis, Michael Baker, Billy Crafton, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Matt Perry, Danielle Jepson, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Bobby Rupel, Roy Everett, Greg Braithwaite, and John Mayer, and all anonymous and past contributors for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift Project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.